Hi, hello everyone. My name's Paula Pettit and I am the business development at Linum Labs. We are a blockchain production house. We create all kinds of blockchain applications, dApps, smart contracts, anything really in the DeFi space. And today I want to talk to you about a type of development and smart contract that we've been building a lot of and seeing quite a lot of popularity increase recently, and it's bonding curves. So I will, is my presentation showing? Yes, I believe. Great, so I'll just get into it. So yeah, so I'm going to be talking on bonding curves today and the what, why, and shapes behind them. I'm not going to go on the Solidity side, development side, seeing as I'm not a smart contract developer, but I will be going on the theory of them and the theoretical math that is behind them. But for more on the Solidity side, one of our Solidity developers, Veronica Coots, will be speaking on them, doing a workshop on them later in the week if you do want to check that out. So first off, what is a bonding curve? So a bonding curve is basically a smart contract that enables users to mint and burn tokens according to a previously defined pricing algorithm. And the pricing algorithm can be graphed as a curve, as shown below, where the price of the token is related to the token supply. So this is a really, really basic bonding curve graph that I've attached here. It's probably represented by current price equals token supply squared. So, you know, y equals x squared. That is a pretty popular graph. And so you can see, can you see my cursor, by the way? Yeah. Yes, okay, I just want to make sure. So yeah, so as the token supply goes up, the price of the token will go up with it in a previously calculated algorithm. So the general flow of a bonding curve is it's a smart contract that allows users, as I said, to mint and buy new tokens. So for the sake of this, we'll just call it BCT, bonding curve token. And they can buy it with the specified reserve currency. We like to use DAI because it is the most popular stablecoin. You can also use Ethereum, but because Ethereum is so volatile, in a good way right now, but is so volatile, any pricing algorithm you put on top will also have to deal with the volatility of Ethereum. So by pegging it to DAI, it allows you to have a lot more control of your actual token price. And as I said, the price of BCT is algorithmically calculated in relation to its current supply. And it'll be shown in its reserve currency. So anytime you will see the price of the token, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4 DAI. With that reserve currency, if the user has DAI, they can then go to the smart contract and buy BCT. Whatever BCT they buy, the DAI that they use to purchase it will be sent to the smart contract as collateral. And it will not be dispersed to any third party. It won't be dispersed to the group or the developers behind it. And the price will move along the bonding curve in relation to the amount of supply the user has minted. I'll go on this a little bit more later in the talk, but it'll likely move the price up for future buyers. At any time, the user can come back and burn or sell their token back. If the price has gone up, meaning more people have bought it after them, the user will likely sell at a profit minus any gas and any additional fees. Once they do that, they'll receive the bonded DAI back from the contract. So the main key features of bonding curve is that it has a deterministic price calculation. So you can see at any point, depending on the amount of supply that has been minted, the price that will go along with it. It has a continuous price. So for almost all of the bonding curves, the price of every next token minted will be pricier than the token before. The only one where this wouldn't be would be a stable token on a bonding curve. And immediate liquidity. So tokens can be bought or sold instantaneously at any time. Essentially, a bonding curve is an automatic market maker. That is not to say that all automatic market makers are bonding curves. But so where do bonding curves come from? So bonding curves hit the DeFi scene a couple years ago in many different corners around the same time. So Bancor, Simon, Delaroy, and Zap individually all kind of thought of this concept at the same time. There's not a concrete line that says one was influenced by the other, although it is possible. But they each developed it for different reasons. So Bancor created it as an AMM to help bootstrap low liquidity markets and more niche tokens. So essentially, if you want to launch a new token, you need to make sure there's liquidity and order books. So obviously, right now, if you want to buy Bitcoin, there's plenty of people buying it and plenty of people selling it. However, if you want to like launch a very small token and you want a user to come buy it, it may be possible that there's not a user on the other side selling. And so maybe they lose interest and now somebody wants to sell and nobody's there to buy. So it's a chicken and egg problem that automatic market makers and bonding curves can help fix. In the curation markets, which I won't focus on too much, essentially the bonding curve is used as a staking and reputation system for content creation. It essentially incentivizes a market to create a token in relation to the curation, the content curation that they put together. And it makes it a financially incentivized incentive for the token holders to only allow and vote up positive content, because when they bring in higher quality content to their market, the value of their token is likely to go up. In those circles, the sell curve is a little bit lower than the buy curve to incentivize users holding on to it a little bit longer. And then the final use case for it is a fundraising mechanism, which is the main form that I will be focusing on today. And it essentially incentivizes consumer behaviors with different pricing structures. So it's like an initial token offering, an initial coin offering, but even smarter than that and even more controlled. And I will go into in depth on how these bonding curves can incentivize different behaviors. So as I said, price will go up with every new token that is minted. That is not to say that price will guaranteedly go up, and this is often a common misconception for people that are new to bonding curves. The price can't just automatically go up, as with anything. So when more tokens are minted, it goes up. However, when they are burnt, it will come down just as fast. So it is important that any bonding curve created is attributed to an actual real life product. When there is a project or something of real world value behind the bonding curve, it's easy to tell what the price should be. However, when you attach, just like a token, a bonding curve to a meme project or any project without real value, it's very hard to derive what the token value should be, and it's prime for pump and dump schemes. So when you design a bonding curve, there are some aspects to consider. So a bonding curve is only as good as the math and incentive structure that you put behind it. So things you should consider when going into it is that early investors should typically be rewarded higher. They took the risk early on, so they should probably be paid for it accordingly afterwards. Opportunity for price manipulation will be taken advantage of on a bonding curve. Because the bonding curve is the oracle of truth, it will always be the same price dependent on the amount of tokens minted. Arbitrage will make it so every other market responds accordingly to the bonding curve. There is also an estimated amount of capital that can be expected from any project. So if you're a larger project, you can expect that you might raise a couple million in your ICO. So your returns that you design should remain logical across that range. You probably don't need to account for how your token will respond if $1 billion have been put into it if you're a small token. However, maybe $1 million, so you should consider it alongside that range. And the growth of a project is likely to follow an S-curve, which I will talk about a little bit in the future. So an S-curve is one of the most popular bonding curves, and I will go into it, but just keep that in mind. So these are some of the most popular at a very, very high level, different shapes that a bonding curve can take. Here up at the left, upper left, you have an horizontal one. This is basically reminiscent of a stable token. So as more tokens are minted, the price does not change. This is also the only curve that every new token is not more expensive than the token before that. In every single other curve design, it does increase. The next one here is linear. So as the token supply is minted, the price goes up linearly. This third one typically gets a lot of attention. It's a polynomial exponential function, and the price of the tokens goes up exponentially in accordance with the amount of tokens minted. And while popular and often referenced just in discussions, what you see on Twitter, it's actually my least favorite bonding curve shape because it really doesn't incentivize the proper behaviors. And I will go into polynomials momentarily, but I just want to call that out. It is my least favorite. The inverse of that would be this sublinear graph over here. And this one increases very quickly and then will stable out and mature to a very stable level at a certain point. As I mentioned, here's the S-curve, named appropriately for how it looks. As it's first minted, the price does not change very much, and I'll go into it a little bit as well. And then it increases very, very rapidly until it reaches its ceiling where it stables out again. And then the last one here is the piecewise curve. And this one can't be defined by a simple type of function, but essentially it is made up of different equations along different intervals. So first, we'll go into the linear curves. So as I mentioned, these go up linearly with the token, except for the horizontal one here, which just stays the same. So linear curves can be defined pretty basically, if you go back to algebra 1, as y equals mx plus b. Or in this case, price equals m times token supply plus b, where m is the slope. As you can see here, the slope in this one is 1, the slope in this one is 2, which means it's just a bit more aggressive. And b is the price at token supply equals 0. This one, while really, really simple and could work for some small projects, it doesn't really allow for much incentivization control. You know, it's just a straight line. So it's not very exciting from my point of view. Polynomial curves, which I said I was not a fan of. These grow very, very slowly in the beginning, gain acceleration, and then speed up to very aggressive rates. So you can see some examples of them here. So price equals token supply squared, price equals token supply cubed, and price equals token supply to the 4th. And as you see, as that n gets higher, the slope grows more aggressively. And the base formula for that is y equals ax to the n, or price equals token supply to the n, where n is greater than 1. And as you can see from this, the larger the variables of a and n are, the more aggressive the growth. However, as I said, this is nearly directly the opposite. This is just not a really good curve to incentivize any sort of behavior because it's highly unsustainable. So while it grows slowly here and maybe you get, you know, some investors to start, it'll increase gain acceleration so quickly that your early investors will be incentivized to sell almost immediately, and any new investors, it's going to be too volatile. So it's just it's really hard to incentivize proper behavior in this because it's just highly unsustainable. And the direct opposite of that is sublinear curves. So these can be accomplished using logarithmics and root-based functions where the n is less than 1. So here is price equals 10 times the logarithm of the token supply. And in this one, it's price equals 10 times the square root of the token supply. And while this one is all right, it immediately rewards early investors. So they come in, they can quickly gain some sort of profit, and then it stabilizes out a bit. You can dictate where the price ceiling of it is. So you can say, you know, once you have, for example, in this one, 20 tokens minted, that you would like the ceiling of it to be around the price of 40. So it will never reach a price of 100. It will stabilize out, which could be nice for a very nice mature project, but at that point, at a certain point, it just becomes a stable token. So if this matches the incentive you're trying to create, fine, but just keep that in mind. Now the S-curve, which I mentioned, is my favorite because I think it represents new projects the best. So essentially, it moves slowly in the beginning, grows aggressively in the middle, and then eventually settles out once it reaches maturity. So this is really great because it allows your token to stay pretty stable in the beginning, perhaps while you're fundraising, finding investors, telling your friends, and that will allow the investors to fund with quite a large amount of money without having too much slippage, and tell their investor friends to invest in it as well, and they'd get a pretty similar price. That is pretty it's good for investments. However, you can dictate that once you've reached a certain amount of funding, that it can then grow pretty quickly. This works if your project has finally reached a marketable state. You can then put it out there along with your bonding curve. It can attract attention because it's growing rapidly. It has that initial funding. Your early investors will maybe want to cash out here, but you already have enough attention to keep it moving up. Then once it reaches maturity, your project is stable, it's mature, it's funded, your token can stable out a bit. And this will just create a more stable environment for your project, for your investors, etc. So essentially, that can be dictated by this formula right here. I'm not going to speak it out because it's just easier to read. And essentially, it's dictated by C1 and C2 here. C1 dictates how aggressively the curve accelerates right here, and C2 determines the inflection point. So this point right here where it goes from accelerating to decelerating. So as I said earlier, you want to think about the range and the amount of funding that you expect for any project. And once you've figured those things out, you can take that into account of what you'd like to make the inflection point, what you'd like to make the curve acceleration, etc. So as I said, this does attract early, potentially large investors, and it does level out once maturity is reached. Piecewise curve is the final one, and it can't be described by a simple formula because it's actually just pieced together, as the name implies, by other formulas. So this one here is an example. Here it's just linear from 0 to 5. From 5 to 10, it takes on a slight polynomial curve. And then from 10 onwards, it takes on an horizontal linear function. And this would just be created with your traditional math piecewise functions. And while it is definitely the most complex because it involves many different equations, it gives you the most control over the growth in your project, because as much as this S-curve I love, it may not be the appropriate curve for you. So you may want to change it depending on different intervals. And this is the one that gives you that flexibility. And yeah, so I'm going to go a little bit into the math of the bonding curves. So to calculate the price at any point, I'll go through this example here that I mentioned earlier, y equals x squared, or current price equals token supply squared. On this curve, you can calculate the price by just squaring the token supply. So if your token supply is 2, your price will be 4. If your token supply is 12, your price will be 144. Pretty simple. Obviously, you do the same thing for any more complex function, but this is easy to visualize. To calculate the pool balance, that is essentially the tokens that have been minted over time for the price that they were at each time. So it essentially comes out to be the area under the curve. And the pool balance is the amount of collateral that has been put into the smart contract. So the amount of DAI that has been given to the smart contract to mint out the bonding curve token. So if you remember from calculus, to find this area under the curve, it is the integral of the bonding curve algorithm. So as shown here, pool balance equals the integral of the price, which is the integral of token supply squared. So you can solve that to pool balance equals 1/3 token supply cubed. So why is calculating the pool balance valuable? I mean, of course, it is valuable to see how much DAI you might have at any point, but it's also especially valuable to calculate the price for the tokens. So in this example here that I'll go through, it's the same exponential curve that I said. So let's imagine that a user wants to buy 10 tokens once 2 tokens have already been minted. So they go to the smart contract and they'll see the price is 4 because 2 tokens have been minted. So 2 squared equals 4. However, what is the price for the tokens for the next 10? So from 2 to 12 here. So you'll find that by taking, subtracting the initial pool balance from the final balance. So how much DAI is left at the end versus how much DAI was there at the beginning. So using calculus again, it will be the integral of the price from the initial token supply to the final token supply. So here it is price for tokens equals 1/3 2 plus 12, or 2 plus 10, which equals 12 cubed, minus 1/3 2 cubed. So that is final pool balance minus initial pool balance. And so you'll find that the price for the tokens, when you solve that out, is 573, which comes out to an effective price per token of 57.3 DAI. That might be a little shocking if somebody saw that the price for the token was 4. So this obviously has a really, really huge slippage. So as I said, that's why the polynomial is one of my least favorites. But yeah, so if that is confusing to you, just think about it. The 12th token was 12 squared was 144 DAI. So the first token they bought was 4 DAI, and the last token they bought was 144 DAI. So that averaged out to 57.3. Yep, very large slippage. So you can find the price for tokens at different intervals. So at supply equals 2, as I said, the price equals 4, and the price for 10 tokens is 573. However, the supply, let's say the next person comes in, they want to buy after this first person bought. They buy when the supply is 12. They get quoted that the price is 144 per token. However, when they go through, the price for tokens is 1/3 12 plus 10 cubed minus 1/3 12 cubed. And that makes their final purchase price 2,973, or essentially 297 DAI per token. This is why, obviously, this is a really, really large growth. And if you're expecting people to buy hundreds of tokens, seems very, very unstable. But essentially, your bonding curve is only as good as the math you put behind it. So if you would like to attract bigger, earlier investors, that is why something like an S-curve may be a better option for you. Probably is a better option for you. And now let's extrapolate out to the 100th token. So let's assume a user comes in, 100 tokens have already been minted, and they want to buy another 10. That'll make the price for tokens 1/3 100 plus 10 cubed minus 1/3 100 cubed. And that comes out to 110,333 DAI, which is essentially 10,000 DAI per token. Which is now 250 times more than that first user who came in when the supply was 2. Maybe that's fine, but these are just the aspects you want to take into consideration when you design your bonding curve and what kind of project you want it to back. So essentially, bonding curves, this was a very, very, very high level look at the reasons for bonding curves, what they are, where they came from, and the different shapes behind it. But they can get much more in depth, and they can be very, very powerful tools to help fundraise for any blockchain products. Conclusion, I don't know if you got the last bit. Essentially, I was just saying they're really powerful tools to launch blockchain products. It's just the smarter way of launching. But it's something we've really focused on here at Linum Labs. We've built quite a few of them for our clients. We dive in depth with what they need, the project, the amount of funding they're trying to raise. So, oh, here, this is the page I thought I was on. So yeah, so if you guys want to talk to us about it, if you are interested in maybe launching your own bonding curve for your own product, you can reach us at linumlabs.com. You can reach me at my email, paula@linumlabs. Yeah, this is, it's become a little bit of my world in the past year, so I'm happy to truly talk about it with anyone. And yeah, more than open to any questions. But I think we are at time.
Yeah, we have a question actually. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm just gonna read it. Samuel is asking, are the interest rate models that lending protocols use an example of lending curves? If yes, then does the polynomial model work better for it?
For the interest models that, to be honest, I started looking into lending protocols, but my specific expertise is not too deep in them, so I'm actually not sure. So I apologize. Polynomials, though, they exist for a reason. You just need to use them very intelligently. So it's possible that it could work for, but they can become very unstable.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Paula, for the presentation.
Thank you. This is really fun. Sorry I cut out there for a bit at the end, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.